Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com, with your host Jason Bougger.
Hey, Jason here. We've got co-host Scott Michael Childers joining on the other side of the table. Hey, Scott.
Hello.
Hello. So, if you go back to episode 9, our episode on submitting short stories, we kind of touched on pay scales, and I thought it'd be a good idea to do an entire episode expanding on the different types of pay you can expect when you're submitting short stories to various magazines and websites out there.
Yes, that's a great idea. I think also to clarify, we probably won't touch too much on novels right now. We're going to focus on the short story market. Poetry markets may be kind of similar to this if you're into the poetry. Novels have their own interesting contractual stuff that we probably won't touch on today.
Yeah, we'll probably stay away from novels and nonfiction, but this will be mostly to poetry and short stories. I have zero experience with poetry. I don't know if you have any.
Just what I read in the funny papers.
Oh my.
No. From what little I've seen, the poetry market types that we're going to be talking about will be somewhat similar. Mm-hmm. But for all you poetry fans, you'd probably best be looking at some other places than us for the specifics, but we'll give you some broad definitions that will help you find that information. The short story stuff will be probably our bread and butter for this episode.
Perfect. So let's get right into it. I guess you can look at it a couple of ways. If you're submitting for pay, you've got different pay scales. If you're submitting for non-paying sites, there's also a few options or different scales of compensation for the writers.
Yeah, those get murkier than the paid types of tiers.
Right. So for non-paying, they used to say exposure only.
Yeah, well, you can get exposure by going out in the winter without a coat.
Yeah, it's a different kind of exposure.
Oh, that's right.
So for print, I like to recommend you just stay away from exposure only, because if they're not paying you, they're most likely not exposing you, and they're just trying to get you to buy their print anthology or their print magazine.
Yeah, unless you really know for sure. I mean, because you've seen other people say, yes, this print thing got me lots of exposure for my next piece.
Right. Academic literary journals might often be non-paying, but they'll have prestige attached to them.
Let me clue you in on academic. Most of it is non-paying. In fact, there's many that the author has to pay for the privilege of being published, which is part of their job, which is a whole other podcast. That was my former life, is academics and publish it or perish.
Maybe we'll reincarnate that for another podcast.
Okay, I'm going to need a strong drink for that one.
Okay, that sounds like a great idea.
For you, baby.
Always. For fiction, for non-paying are generally going to be small press publishers. They might be some startups. For print, I would stay away from them, only because you're not going to get a wide audience, and you're most likely going to end up having to buy anthologies, and that's what they're there for, just to sell you your own product. Websites I feel completely different about for non-paying websites, because it is there, it's on the web, you can send the link to people, it's indexed in Google, so there is some exposure there.
Yeah, and you can kind of control that exposure more than a print.
Yeah. I
mean, you could send a copy of whatever print anthology your short story was in to everyone you know, or you could email a link.
Yeah.
Which one's cheaper for you? The link, of course.
So it's not a bad idea. It's going to have a higher acceptance rate than a paying site, and I don't know, think about it if you want. The other types of non-paying short story markets might be print anthologies or ebooks that'll pay royalty only, where you'll get no advance, and you may or may not get a portion of the earnings after all is said and done. I've been published in a few of these, and one of them did sell enough copies that there were quarterly royalties for the time frame of my contract, which is 2 years. There's been others that I've never seen a penny and don't plan to. So, I was young. And the final non-paying ones are contributors' copies.
Yeah, so you're getting merchandise instead of actual pay.
Right.
Okay.
Some people say that's fine, others will say it's not. I'll leave that up to the listener. if you get 5 contributors copies for your short story,
Again, you'd have to stop and think, what am I going to do with these 5 contributor copies?
Yeah.
And who is the audience? I mean, there are some pieces where you don't expect it to be published at all, and you happen to stumble into this deal, and you're not going to get ripped off. Or you've done your research and you feel you're not going to get ripped off, and those 5 contributor copies are great. You got one for yourself and maybe some family or something.
Sure.
But then there's others where you know nothing about the group, and it's like, yeah, we'll get you contributor copies, and you haven't heard anyone actually getting their contributor copies, then you may want to think twice about that.
Yeah. Moving on to the next is token pay. My analogy for this is always kind of like the actor who's just getting into acting. They're going to do the smaller shows for $25 or whatever. You'll sell a short story to a token site for $3. Usually these are going to be websites. Theme of Absence, my e-zine, is a token paying website. The pay is going to be based on your story, not a word count. So it's going to be a fixed price per story. And it's going to be less than 1 cent per word. The benefit to these over non-paying sites is that you will have steeper competition. You'll have more quality submissions.
And you will actually get money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a little bit is better than nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I recommend these to new writers all the time. Find a market listing site and just search for token pay. Theme of Absence, I pay $3 for flash fiction, $5 for short stories. That's a token paying site, and I accept about 20% of my submissions, so that's a good sampling.
Yeah. If I could throw in something about token pay is you're probably going to have not just maybe greater success in getting published in these, but you're going to have greater success in finding a niche market.
Yes.
If you are an author who writes an extremely niche type of fiction even, you're probably going to get your first exposures in these token type of publications, whether it's print or online. Most of these will probably be online, especially the super niche. That's probably a super niche. So that if you're looking to grow an audience, these might be the areas that you are looking at as a really brand new author, trying to get some published credits to your name. And then as you become a more well-known author, more general genre markets may open up to you. But yeah, if you're a really super niche, like you do deco punk, and such a thing exists. I'm reading one now. A deco punk, you may be looking at an extremely small audience group, so you're going to probably get a token because that's not a huge paying market for short story.
Right. Another big one is bizarro horror.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's good. I don't think there's any shame in token paying sites, or I wouldn't run one.
That's a good point.
The next step up is SemiPro Markets. These, I think, if you can start getting SemiPro acceptances, you're starting to get there. These will pay usually by word count, a penny per word up to 5 cents per word. They're usually, the ones I submit to are still usually going to be online, sometimes print magazines, or sometimes they'll have both. Competition rate is usually around a 5% acceptance.
Yeah. Would you say that maybe some small press anthologies would fall in semi-pro?
Yes.
Okay.
Spark is one I've submitted to in the past. I run a Halloween contest at Theme of Absence, and I do semi-pro pay on that because it's flash fiction, so it doesn't cost me a lot.
So even in the same, I just wanted to generalize this a little bit. So even the same publication may have different rates.
Yes.
For different times or different events.
In fact, I've seen pro markets that will give token pay for reprints.
Okay.
Or token markets that'll give non-pay for reprints.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about reprints a little bit later, I think.
Yeah. I've even seen some markets that they'll do pro pay for one feature story per anthology, and then like semi-pro for the rest or something like that.
So you have like the feature.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's lots of varieties, but semi-pro, like I said, are 9 times out of 10 they'll pay based on word count, where token pay will pay a flat fee. And then moving on to pro, these are the ones where less than 1% are accepted, and they'll pay more than 5 cents per word. To get acceptance into like the SFWA or the Horror Writing Association, they'll usually require one or more professional sales per year. And, these are, you're talking your Asimovs and
These are
stuff like that.
Usually the top tiers.
These are the few literary magazines you still see at Barnes & Noble on the shelves. Science fiction, fantasy magazine. Or is it fantasy and science fiction?
Depends who you talk to.
Yeah. But those are, every now and then I'll still submit to Pro Markets. The one drawback is that they'll usually have a long turnaround time. You'll usually get a form letter, and they'll usually not allow you to be submitting the story elsewhere while you wait for their response. So, that's a drawback. If you have to wait half a year for a form letter, you can't be sending that story someplace else.
Well, and I think we might have touched on this on a previous episode. And coming from my background with academia, you never submit your piece to more than one at once.
Most of the time that's true with fiction. Yeah. In fact, even theme of absence, I say no simultaneous submissions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's not even because, what if, this place says no and this other place says yes simultaneously. Simultaneous submissions are fine. But it prevents the occasion where you get two offers at once.
Right.
And it makes you look bad because now you've got to say no to a group because you chose this other one. That other publisher may not look at you again because it's like it's not worth our time because they're just going to say no to our offer. So, sorry about the soapbox there in mid-form. But yeah, simultaneous submissions just in general I think are bad form.
Yeah. Some sites allow them. It's in the site guidelines, but
just because it's allowed doesn't mean you should do it. You're allowed to not use the Oxford comma. I don't agree with that.
We should almost do an entire episode on that.
On the Oxford comma?
Because I also love Oxford comma.
I think we found our first merchandise.
There you go.
Digression aside. So, we've got the Pro Market, and these are going to be the top tier, almost mainstream, people outside of genre fiction are going to recognize the names, probably.
Even if they are genre fiction markets, they'll still be recognized, sure.
Okay. And again, these rates are kind of fluid. It gives you a rough idea where these tiers are.
I said Pro Markets are 5 cents per word or more. I'm seeing a lot more that are doing 8, 9, or 10 cents per word, which, you have a 4,500 word short story, 10 cents a word, that's not a bad payment.
That's more than $50.
Yes, it is.
I think.
More than 3. So it's good to know these terms because when you start looking for places to submit to, you'll see this terminology. And like I said, there's really no shame in submitting to any type of pay market or non-paying market. It's entirely up to you. So keep that in mind.
Yes, keep that in mind.
We wanted to touch on reprints.
Yeah, I think reprints. Like we touched on earlier, some of these will give a different rate for reprints. That assumes that you have the control to offer a reprint. Some of the publishers, especially the higher tier ones, are going to be no reprints allowed by anyone else but them for maybe a short amount of time, maybe forever. Depends how you sign your copyright rights away or kept them. So, some of these a reprint may be allowed in a token, or even, hey, we'll pay token for original and no payment for reprint. And there's going to be a whole combination of these type of things.
So be aware of that. And another thing to be aware of with reprints, if you paste your short story on your Facebook page, if you put it on your own blog, if it's in a token market online and taken down 3 days later, that still is considered a published short story.
Yes. So you can't send that off.
Yeah, when they say no reprints, they mean in no form whatsoever. The one exception is if it's on a critique site that's a members-only critique site.
So behind a password. Well, in those cases, those are workshopped and not published.
Right.
So there would be a difference. I'd like to see someone argue, well, I published it on my blog as a big beta workshopping of my piece. I don't know if anyone would act. We'd have to see if someone would post. If you know of a case where that happened, let us know, because I'm curious to hear that experience.
Just as an FYI, I have whenever I accept a short story to Theme of Absence, I do Google the title and the author, and I've caught a couple of people that I then said, "Oh, sorry, this has been reprinted on your blog." So that's a no.
I would do more. A short story, I'd grab a couple random paragraphs and throw those in Google.
Oh, yeah, in case the title's different or something.
Quote mark,
Yeah.
cut and paste from the piece. Quote.
Yeah.
And there's plagiarism detector sites. I think there's some out there for free. Academics use this a lot. So there was some. I don't want to get into politics, but the recent speech brouhaha, they kept bringing up there are free sites out there to check for plagiarism. Well, editors could use those same tools to see if something's been reprinted.
Yeah, very true. Let's table a discussion on plagiarism for the future.
Yes, I think that deserves some good, honest talk.
And also, for the listeners, if there's anything you want us to talk about, go to the contact page at writegoodbooks.com and leave us a comment, and we'll be happy to look at your ideas for topics. We are out of time for this one, so thanks for listening. Ashley, real quick, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Right now, this is a non-paying market, right? Can I talk to the editor?
You could try.
I have nothing else to add.
He might be hiding. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. If you'd like to support us, check us out on the web at www.writegoodbooks.com/podcast. Check out the website. Let us know what you think, and see you next time.
See ya.